Thanks, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We are so thrilled that you're in our house. It's also our pleasure to host the BIF Summit for the 12th time. When Saul asked us to kick things off at 8:45 a.m., I said 8:45 is not early for theater people. 8:45 is yesterday for theater people. So you're going to have to cut us a little slack, because I just had my first 6 cups of coffee. So welcome, and we're really glad you're here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Wilson, Jr., and I am already a weepy mess from listening about Saul talk about this institution, which I love so much, and this art form that I love so much. I will be entering, as I enter this building on the 10th of October, to begin rehearsing Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. I will be beginning my 13th season here in this company. And thank you. And it is my extreme pleasure to introduce a man who came the year after I started, and I had the blessed pleasure of being a part of the conversations in our theater around who to hire, who should we choose, and which the direction of our theater. And I couldn't be more proud that I was a person who said yes, a strong yes, to Curt Columbus, a strong yes to his vision, a strong yes to his commitment to company, community, and education. It is my pleasure to introduce the Art Solomon and Sally Lapidus Artistic Director, Curt Columbus.
Thank you, Joey. And we did this on purpose because I wanted to say some things about my friend Joe, who has been one of my best friends for 12 years now. He is one of the greatest actors you will ever see. He has played everything from Mark Antony to Walter Lee Younger to Willie Long to Lancelot in Camelot. I mean, he's done everything. He's a brilliant mind. He's a brilliant educator. He's a brilliant man. So, Joe Wilson, Jr.
Thank you. Stop. Oh, stop. We have a lot of talking to do. Now, this may seem a little strange.
Yeah.
Because the two of us were billed as two separate stories here at the summit, but we are artists. We are collaborators. We are in constant conversation. Yeah. We concert with our audience. We concert with the script. I concert with my characters. And I concert with my fellow artists, actors, designers, and playwrights. And so Curt and I thought, we have to do a scene, right? We have to do this together, and our stories are so linked together that we couldn't bear not being here together with each other. So I believe that Curt's original title of his talk was, Can Theater Enable Community Transformation? And my question that I was asking in my story is, should we combine the art of acting with community activism? I have to say that I have to talk about the history of this institution before I can move forward. Because all too often we try to move forward without knowing where we've come from and knowing upon whose shoulders we stand. This institution was formed in the middle of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. It began to flourish during the counter-culture revolution of the 1970s. The regional theater movement was gaining steam as a direct response to the commercialization of our art form. Now, I have to back up and say, what else? There were a lot of things going on at the time. One thing that was going on is as more money and power streamed from the coasts and were centered in Dallas, centered in Providence, centered in Kansas City, centered in these Minneapolis, in these small and medium markets, part of the way the folks who were making things happen in these cities, part of how they marked their success was about purchasing culture and building institutions. But the real culprit for why theater artists were pissed off, and they had lots of reasons to be pissed off at this time because of these movements I've been telling you about, the real reason they were pissed off is because they were responding directly to the main culprit of this corporatization, this commodization of the art form, and that was Broadway. Artists wanted a platform for new work. They wanted to do work that was daring and responsive and political and controversial. Now, what also was going on was this. Not to take anything away from cultures, all of our cultures who have participated in making art since the beginning of time, educational institutions became more diverse and integrated, making art opportunities available to more people of color. And these people of color, like me, came from environments where art making, seeing art, was simply a luxury item. Okay? Art making and seeing art was about, can you afford to participate in the act? These educational institutions served as a pipeline for more artists of colors and their allies who demanded more diverse theatrical representation and more diverse educational pedagogy. But the other problem is, once we brought these folks to the region, there weren't roles for them to play. People weren't writing parts, or producing, I should say, parts for people of color or women. Now, mind you, this has been very disappointing history in our institutions, that we sometimes forget that there have been people in the trenches from the beginning who are writing black work, writing work that features and is about marginalized communities of color, but when we have white institutions not producing that work and not being rewarded to produce that work, it wasn't being done. So how did we respond to that? We respond to that because we, as regional theaters, love classical work. And so what we would do is, we found places for marginalized actors and women within the classical canon. I.e., why not cast a woman as Lear, Julius Caesar, as we did last year? Why not? We do Christmas Carol every year. Why not cast the black, beautiful Barbara Meek as Scrooge? And finally, this institution was built upon the shoulders of a man named Claiborne Pell.
Yeah, that deserves applause.
And you probably have heard of Claiborne Pell because of Pell Grants, but you may not have known that Claiborne Pell was a senator responsible for writing the original legislation which established the National Endowment for the Arts. That's right. So upon his shoulders, we stand. Upon his legacy, we stand. But somewhere along the way, we went off the road.
Well, look, here's the thing. Claiborne Pell was great because he wanted art for everyone. And we as an institution, as Joey said, we had multicultural casting, cross-cultural casting. Oh dear.
Oh my God.
Drama.
What the F? Sorry.
So we were... He is such... Yeah, 13 years no one's done that. Yeah. It takes Joe Wilson to knock the F out of things.
Oh!
We could do this all day. Look, when we talk about our history, there are a lot of things to celebrate. We were expanding the boundaries of the kinds of bodies that were seen on stage. But the way in which we got lost is that we started to get complacent about how that interfaced with our audience. Our audience did not change its complexion in the way that our stage work changed. So let me tell you a little story. About 3 years ago, two brilliant artists, Richard Jenkins and Sharon Jenkins, two of the founding members of our company, came to me and they said, "We want to do Oklahoma." And I thought, Oklahoma? All right, I never thought that I'd be producing Oklahoma, but then they led me back to the original story on which Oklahoma was based, called Green Grow the Lilacs. And in it, the character of Judd Fry is described clearly as a person of color. And I thought, well, that's something I have never seen in Oklahoma. That's something I would like to see on our stage. Here's my dear friend. I know that he's a baritone.
And of course, the first thing he asked me is, what part do you want to play? And I responded, Judd Fry. Why? Because no one writes for baritones in the American theater.
Right.
And also because whenever you see that production, there's always one song that's left out after the famous Smokehouse song. The Poor Judd is Dead song, the song that we all know. Sharon and Dick wanted to add in the song after that scene, which is called Lonely Room, which gives the audience a sense of why Judd is who he is.
So, and this is, in all of these good intentions, what we didn't think about is Poor Judd is Dead, which is a song where a white man is encouraging a black man to hang himself. Now, we know that we're talking about our friends, actors, no one is really doing this, but our audience, in our audience, it created great unsettlement.
Now, we must say that we didn't do this haphazardly, that we talked about this in the rehearsal hall.
Yeah.
First of all, what would it mean to have a black actor playing a villain?
But we've done that many times
We've done that many
before.
times. And
Right.
also, we had a very multicultural cast, so we figured that would alleviate some of that pressure.
Right.
But we also talked about what if we had Judd being the only person of color in the story,
Right.
as the original would have dictated.
Which is what we should have done. Hindsight is 20/20. But here we are, the production starts, and in the second week, we start having protests out front. We start having people carrying signs that say, white supremacist, that say, Trinity is a white privilege institution that keeps people of color out. And we look at our audience, and we know that it's true. No matter how good we are at putting bodies of color on our stages, we don't have the audience to support being able to say, no, we're not that. So for all of our good intentions, we've created a situation. Now, the situation requires a response. There are two responses, which is to say no and keep out. And instead, what we did is we really started to examine our white privilege and our privilege at having this microphone and how we could open up our audience and open up our spaces. And that work got very deep and very personal.
Because what we also discovered, and what I discovered, is that privilege isn't exclusive to white people. Privilege is not exclusive to white people. I am a light-skinned black man from New Orleans. I was able to pass the brown paper bag test. My hair could go through a fine-tooth comb, and so I grew up with a lot of privilege. I'm an educated black man who was afforded Catholic school education and went to Notre Dame, and I got a master's degree, and my parents struggled, but I am a man of privilege. Because I have enjoyed the luxury of being trained alongside the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis and spending time at the Children's Theater Company in Minneapolis and now being at Trinity Rep, I've had the privilege of not having to audition for shows. I have had the privilege of having license and agency in my career, and my privilege didn't allow me to see how problematic it would be for me to put my black body in that space. Now, Saul talked about a series of events that converge, and this casting situation was not a new situation.
No.
We had gone through this earlier in the season with a little play called
To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
So it wasn't the first time that we'd had these questions arise. What is different in our response? Here's what's different in our response. We create a space. We're not going to stop making provocative work. We're not going to stop putting Joe in situations that will provoke response in our audience. But instead, what we're going to do is to create a space for our audience to have safe discussions about the things that they see on stage, right?
And it's also important for me to let the audience know that even though you guys come and see Joe and you see me do everything from Ebenezer Scrooge to Martin Luther King,
but every role that Ebenezer Scrooge, by the way, it's really going to sell out fast.
Every role that I approach, I'm approaching it from the lens of being a gay African-American man. That's who I am. We can't colorblind cast me. I'm always thinking of my race. I always have to think about my place as an African-American gay man in our culture.
Right. So we've also instituted a bunch of equity, diversity, and inclusion working groups at the theater. They're on the staff level, they're on the board level, they're at every level. We're creating space for conversations to happen to change the complexion of our audience, of our theater. And look, let me say this is really good business. This is really good business for a couple of reasons. It's really good business because demographically, we know that America is going to stop looking like me and start looking like Joe. So who are your customers? They don't look like me in 20 years. So that change is incredibly important, incredibly significant. But also, we are a creative business. And in order to be a creative business, we need to have the largest number of inputs to our creativity. And that should be true for all of us as creative businesses, right?
So as a result of celebrating the history of this institution, in terms of being leaders and having a resident theater company, in terms of our commitment to being a community theater, a theater by, for, and of the community, and being committed to education, I came to Curt a few months ago with an idea, and I'm happy to say,
Don't cry.
First time I'm talking about it publicly. But I came to Curt with an idea to try and not do something different, and not to reinvent the wheel, but first of all, uplift the work that we are doing in this institution to become better every single day. And the reason why I told that story about our history is to get us back on track in terms of taking art out of being a luxury item and a commodity and into being a critical way that we engage as a people. And so I am proud to announce, with the blessing of the board, that we here at Trinity Rep are establishing the Center for Activism and Performance. And we are going to forever remind artists and art makers their inextricable link of making art that's for, by, and of people. And a place, thank you, and a place that is committed to not reacting based upon a series of random situations, but that we are purposefully putting people together to collide in terms of their ideas and their values, and with purpose to make this a better place. I am proud that we led then, and I am so proud that we're going to lead now and into the future.
So one last thing, Saul, I'm really sorry we broke your BIF. But I have to say, this is work we should all be doing. In a world of limited resources, we can no longer afford to say, my work is not my values. My work is not my aspirations. My work is only me and not anyone else. We can't do that anymore. My work is our work, and that's what we all have to try to do. Thanks very much.
Thank you.